Hi, welcome. This is Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail. Welcome. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. If you have been with us in the past show, we are just continuing. We are just continuing with some of the most amazing conversations, but also I want to just remind everybody, when Linda schedules these things for my show, she really looks at what you all are asking for and asking for more of. And that is so important that we're able to respond. And one of the things that has come up more times than not just on this show, but also on the show I do with Mark, the psychic and the doc, is come up this idea about what do we do? What do we do? Transitions. What do we do when we're animal friends? What do we do? How should we be? What is it about this that helps us understand things more? And all of the questions you never thought you would even be asking, you ask. Today, Sarah Bowen's joining me here today. And I just want, if you want to go to Sarah's website, you can go to spiritual-rebel.com. Go ahead, hop over there. But we're going to be giving away at least one copy of this book. Why? Because I love Sarah's approach to things. I'm smiling, right? How could I even be smiling about this? But I am smiling. And what I love is when two people like she and I can come together to talk about things that at one point in time in our lives were heartbreaking in a sense, especially with our four-leggeds, especially with our animal friends that we've loved, right? But what does it mean to be an animal chaplain? And what happens when you're in front of Sarah and there are questions you want to ask? There are things you want to talk about. This is sacred sendoffs. And Lydia is going to make sure you all have a lot of information about Sarah. This is an animal chaplain's advice for surviving animal loss, making life meaningful and healing the planet. It's all of that. And believe me, you may have had the loss of your animal friend. But when I watch what's happening in the Amazon, I just cry. And so much of what you all have seen. See, when you get to meet Sarah today, and you're meeting her right now, and you understand this book, kind of cool, I might even read from it. But when you read this, you're going to understand and not feel guilty that you feel loss in your heart when you see the fires raging, loss in your heart when you hear about something, either vicariously or third or fourth hand, and you're wondering, why am I crying about that? It's not even my dog. Or you hear something that really touches your heart and you know you are in the loss zone. You know you're there, but you don't really know what to do about it. Today, I want to make sure you know who Sarah is. I think I told you animal chaplain, right? But more than that, an advocate for all creatures. And when you sign up for that, before you're born into this world and you're her and you sign up for that, that is a mission. That is a mission. So today you're going to meet who this advocate is. You're going to meet who this chaplain is. You're going to understand the depth and the breadth of what happens when you sign up and say yes to a life path that enables you and empowers you to be an advocate. You're going to understand that there's both the light and dark, the serious and the funny, and all aspects of everything. Why? Because that is the world we live in. Sarah, it's great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Pat. So happy to be here with you.
Now, I shared a little bit about Travis before, and I look back and I could really think of some funny things, right? And yet losing him, I don't know that I've ever felt quite that before in my life. Why is that? So
it's
go ahead.
It's very, very common for us to have that, because I think one of the things, Pat, that we don't have the words within our culture to talk about animal loss, right?
Yeah.
So we avoid talking about it. We think we're going to be overwhelmed, so I can't possibly talk about it. Can't go there until the day it happens. And so sometimes we're a little underprepared, and most of the time we're undersupported. So we have a society that says human death worth mourning, animal death, not sure. Right. So one of the things I'm hoping to do in Sacred Sendoffs is to give us that language that we can talk about to explain, why does this hurt? Because there's a fascinating study that came out that said that 93% of humans that lose an animal have a substantial impact on their life that goes to their daily functioning. 93%. So we got to talk about this. Like you said, seriously and funny too.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, if you talk to anybody that has gone through or has experienced this or is in the process of this right now, I mean, for those of you listening, if what we're talking about is resonating with you and you have a question for Sarah, please call 1-800-930-2819. I mean, even if you're in the process of it where wait a minute, I've got my beautiful cat friend with me and I know there's something not right. I know that the days are numbered. See, that's all part of the transitional platform, isn't it?
It is. And so I think it's being able to look at, life is a continuum. And we know that for humans as well. And so, we go through these different phases and we need to be able to support our furry, feathered and finned friends, in the same kind of way of understanding, being attuned. That's what you're talking about, Pat, being attuned to what's going on with their health. And then how can I support them? How can I notice the moments where they might need more? They might need something more for their well-being. So I help teach people how to, meditate with their dogs or how to pray for animals or how to do different things like that. But also recognize the moments of lightness that can help support us, that we still have that animal in our lives. And there are those fun, I have a cat named Deacon I live with, who's a funny little skittish cat who has some shelter trauma. And the other day I was out at the grocery store and I found this huge mouse. It's like you're supposed to scratch on it. It's a huge toy. And I brought it home. I mean, it's huge. It's about 18 inches long. And my husband said, "Oh, come on, Sarah." And I said, no, I just had this feeling I need to bring this home. And it sat in the house for about a week and a half. And now Deacon, who's not feeling well this week, is curled up next to that big mouse. And it's lighthearted. And it's also, he's not feeling well because my husband's gone and he misses him a little bit. So he has a little comfort out of this ridiculous looking mouse. So, being able to be really attuned to what our animal friends are going through, I think is the first step of what you're talking about, Pat.
It is. And, you just reminded me of something. I want to kick this off because, throughout the book, there are references to this. And it's kind of a little funny story. It wasn't funny at the time, but I'm going to share it with you. We were living in this old 200-year-old home, right? I was renting this home in Jersey, in Morristown, New Jersey. Just moved there, loved it, kind of woody place, beautiful, right? But it was 200 years old. The basement was almost like an open flood zone, right? And, what was fascinating about it was every evening we'd go to sit in that living room and next to the fireplace, and these two little mice, they would come
I was going to say, there's a mouse in this story, isn't there?
There's a mouse in this story. It's like a little teeny hole, right? You can't even see the hole. I don't even know. But there was like this little platform. It was like a shelf right next to the fireplace. And these two would come out and they would play. And I would just be so oh, okay. So not so much for the person I was with. They were like, okay, we got to put the mousetrap out. I'm like, no, why? What's wrong with them? They're coming out. Well, they're blah, blah, blah. They got this and they got that. And I'm like, but you know what? Here's what they're doing. They're coming out. They're not leaving that shelf. They're coming out. They're like doing what they're doing. And then they're going back in. And I don't know. They're gone. That's my view.
Well, and
They were
there's another,
visiting.
yeah, and that's another piece of the work that I do with a lot of people. You know, there's work around companion animals, right? How can we help them thrive when they're living? How can we address their transition when they go to what I like to call the what's next, whatever that happens to be for them? But another piece is ethics. Ethics around interspecies living are so messy. From the mouse that you see in your house to what's going on with deforestation around the world, right? And those are kind of two different sides of it. But I will get calls from people saying, you know, I've got this thing going on. I had a call from someone the other week who said, I've got wasps that are invading the side of the house. I feel bad about taking the chemicals up there, right? Because it might drop and affect other wildlife. And I don't know about the wasp. And I'm just turned around in my head as a spiritual person who believes in, you know, the value of life and the value of the interconnectedness of the oneness, right? Or all these kind of terms that we use. What the heck do I do? So, you know, helping people sort through that.
Right.
The solution for anyone who's curious about wasps, if you get their nest a little damp, not a lot of water, but a little damp, then they'll abandon it.
That's what I did. That's exactly what I did out in the shed, right? In my house. That's exactly what I did. But you see, this was so, I mean, this was the thing that was going to end this relationship. I'm just saying, the funny part of it is I'm sitting there waiting for them to come out every night because I don't know, they came out the same time, I think, or when I was done with work and I was home, and they would just come out, and I kind of thought they were coming out to see me. So that's the ego, right?
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Maybe that's a connection, Pat. You know, have you heard the word? Have you ever heard the word speciesism?
No.
Oh,
I didn't hear that. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, there's this word speciesism that goes to this idea that, you know, we value different species more than other species. And that's by culture, right? In some cultures, you know, people will eat one animal and live with another animal. In another country, it's the opposite. You know, some people can tolerate and find joy in having mouse visits. Other people, I don't think so. You know, so it points to this idea that we don't treat all animals the same. And saying like, I'm an animal lover isn't always true. Because do we really mean that? Or do we mean I'm a cat lover? Or I'm a dog lover? You and I are obviously mice lovers. Someone else on the listening right now might be like, I don't think so, folks.
Right.
You know, so really being able to have some discernment. We are 0.01% of life on Earth, humans. I'm going to say that again.
Say it again.
0.01% of life on Earth. So, you know, we're going to have interactions with a lot of other folks, and we have to kind of tease through what do those look like?
And, you know, that's what I love about your book, and I love about what you're doing, because you kind of take us through, and I love that so out of the gate, you have a cat story. And I love that you have that, because for most of my life, I walked around saying I'm not a cat person until Felicia showed up on my door when I lived at Green Lake. Now, I'm not supposed to have pets. So this black cat, Felicia, who lived 2 doors down, who they didn't take care of her, she slept in the garage. She showed up on my door, and I snuck her in every day, but I had to let her go home at night. This cat literally helped me through 5 years of research and write my dissertation. Now, that's a longer story. But my point is this: these animal friends are going to show up. I don't think there is a mistake, like the mouse. I don't think there's a mistake about the mouse. Travis, my 13-year collie that was supposed to live 1 year. I literally paid for my vet's new office, new Mercedes. I wouldn't send him back. After 6 months, I couldn't send him back. Are these soul connections? What is the energy of this? If you could talk about that, Sarah.
You know, that's a really great question. And I think that, you know, in the world's different religions and spiritual traditions and philosophies, you know, we have a lot of different words for the way that we talk about these connections. And, you know, and they really do make sense that we are, you know, we share so much DNA from a scientific basis with animals. You know, there's such a tiny little percentage that we're different. but we're connected. We're connected energetically. We're connected physically we share habitats together. We are connected, people have ways of talking about soul or spirit or chi or prana or whatever, your language happens to be. But if we feel those connections with other humans, why would we draw a line with saying we don't feel them with other earthlings? So, I think our language about that can be very fluid.
Yeah.
Because it's in the experience. That's just something that we humans with our words love to do, right? Is we want to define it, and then we want to study it, and then we want to publish an academic paper on it.
Oh, we have to get a t-shirt. We got to get then the t-shirt. I love mice.
We're going to need to do that whole thing. But if we go back to, I teach animal chaplains, I teach at seminaries. I'm always going to kind of bring it back into those beautiful sacred texts as well, in the idea that, we have these rich connections of experience. Some people might call them mystical experiences, right? Or somebody might just call them a soul connection or a deep connection, or something like that. But that to notice them and then to ask, what do we do about it? Because there can be this stopping. Now, I watch this all the time, so I'm going to critique something a little bit here. I'm a little bit of a snarky animal chaplain, but I'm going to critique something. That often what we'll do is then go to a book and say, I saw a ladybug. What does that mean? And we open up a book, right, of spirit guides or totems or whatever, and we say, oh, this is what ladybug represents. And we're doing ourselves a little bit of an injustice in that, I think, because we're robbing ourselves from a connection with an individual being, right? And letting something drop into our intuition, into our deepest knowledge, and to our deep knowing, by going to a book with something that somebody else says. Now, I love those books. I've got about a dozen of them, and I look them up too, right? But if we can go one step further and say, this ladybug came while I was sitting next to it, it reminded me, or I noticed that I should, or, something like that, and be able to see what wisdom is coming to us, then we can have deeper connections. Now, I don't know if the ladybug's actually telling you that, or I don't know if they're facilitating a connection. I don't know. I haven't written a paper on that yet. But I do know that something happens because we hear it over and over from people and from different cultures. How can I, even if it's just, Pat, even if it's just that connection with an animal made us stop during the day, right? Because we are so busy going from here to there to here to there. And when we're able to connect. Now, what we do know scientifically is we also know that the more connections that we have with other species, the more willing we are to be compassionate to them, the more willing we are to be compassionate to other people, and the more likely we are to conserve habitats and be concerned about the earth, which is another thing I talk about in the book, right? So this isn't just kind of a personal drop-in of knowledge. It affects the way that we affect the world that we live in. And that's pretty serious, and that's pretty important.
Yeah. When I read your book, I'm really struck by one of my mentors, and I think about the circle of things. And I love that you brought that up, because you and I probably have experiences which go beyond what you read about our connection to an animal that probably isn't described the way it's described in the books. I talked about this the other day, my first vision quest, and what I was confronted with on there. And, I don't know if I would have read the book on what rattlesnake means, or lizard means, or turkey vulture means. The turkey vulture saved my life. But it's all about connection. The other thing I want to get to, because you mentioned this in the book, and boy, this is it. We count, and you mentioned it, I think, in COVID. So I'm going to paraphrase. Please help me out if I don't get it exactly right. But I am so thrilled you talked about the fact that we did count bodies in COVID, and I'm not taking anything away from that. But we did not talk about the journey of our animal friends through this. We didn't talk about what had happened to them. We didn't talk about the loss of them. We didn't talk about some of the places where these people lived, let's call it, and some of the things that happened through neglect because of lack of staff. I mean, we're not talking about that so much, but there's also the loss. There's also the connection. How did COVID either enlighten or change our perspective on sacred sendoffs?
Yeah, that's such a great question. You know, we became more willing worldwide to talk about loss than I think we've ever been. Perhaps, well, not I was not around during the world wars, so I'll make that caveat, but we started to talk about loss in a different way. Also, loss that was more of a existential loss than one human hurting another human, right? This was a different way, and this was connected directly with how we have been treating animals. So some countries have been dealing with pandemics and or different types of zoonotic illnesses much longer than we have in the US. I'm located in New York. So, you know, we hadn't dealt with this at such a scale as we have now. So a couple things happened. You know, we started watching. I know I was locked to CNN with the numbers, right? And I was looking up in my county how many people and is it okay? And we got fixated on watching those numbers, but we didn't count when people went home from labs and had to kill all the mice, or when people had to leave the farms, the factory farms, the CAFOs, and millions of animals lost their lives. We didn't talk about those things so much. We got a little bit of news about them. But what we did notice, right? So that was one side of it. And we also started talking about the connection of zoonotic illnesses in a way that we haven't before. And it's not that those animals cause those illnesses. It's the way we treat those animals causes those illnesses. But the other thing is people were home much more. Some people, the people who, you know, that we could go down another road with who was able to be home.
Yeah.
And who was not able to be home and what that means about class in our society and socioeconomics. But we'll pull up from there for a second. But a lot of people were home. So a lot of people went, I want a dog. And they ran out to shelters and they grabbed dogs. And so shelters saw, you know, a great, you know, lift in how many dogs were getting to homes. Dogs were also not being crated for 8 hours a day while their humans went to work. Which is something I'm not a big fan of, you know, a dog staying in a crate for 8 hours at a time every day. So that, you know, dogs were getting more walks, dogs were getting more play. Cats, I don't know, my cats, they were kind of like, human, you gonna leave sometime? We do stuff when you're gone, right? So I don't know, cats, I don't know. But
then the cat got a dog in the house too.
Well, and then the cats discovered Zoom, right? And so, you know, how many cattails do you see going across? So
amazing.
So, I mean, it's funny, but also our relationship with the animals in our home became more visible because we were spending so much time on Zoom. 70% of houses in the US have an animal companion, 70%. So we started seeing people's animals, right? And that also meant from a loss perspective, when people were losing animals or losing family members, we are seeing each other more now than we used to. You know, when we were on the phone, we're seeing sadness in our faces. We're seeing joy in our faces. We're seeing each other more. I mean, you know, FaceTime and other things too, but we're seeing each other more. So it's made a really big difference. Now, we also had folks who were concerned that their cat or dog might give them COVID.
Yes, that's true.
There was a big scare that happened there. And then we also had I'm going back to work. I can't take care of the dog, you know, so it brought up so many things. And I think we'll be studying that for a long time, Pat.
I think we will. And, you know, I'm so glad you included it in the book. I'm not sure quite how you got it in the book, but you did, because it really opens up another conversation for, you know, let's just call it a progressive conversation. You know, what I love about what you've done in Sacred Sendoffs, and for those of you just tuning in, I think, Lydia, you're really showing the book. I'm just going to hold it up here for a minute. You know, Sarah's ready to meet Sarah Bowen. Before we go to break, I would love for you to let folks know how they get a copy of the book, but how they find out more about you, because this is one part of who you are and what you do. You're like a multi-dimensional species and all on your own.
I'm a busy one.
Yeah. So please tell folks how to do that. And then when we come back, I want to really take people on the journey of the book, because it is a journey. I don't think you leave much out, including the conversation on spirituality and how animals show up. Please give out your information. Let folks know how to get a copy of the book. And then, Benny, when we come back, we'll open up the phone lines and give away our own copy.
Absolutely. So we actually have a site for the book and for my info on this, which is sacredsendoffs.com. Makes a lot of sense. And you can get the book there. You can also we have these little kits for ritual. If you had a loss, a kit to take you through some activities to do to help with grief and healing. We also have info there on if you feel like you might want to be an animal chaplain. We have a training starting September 6th that has a 3-month, a 6-month, and a 9-month track to becoming an animal chaplain. So if you like this juicy conversation and you want to have more of it, that's an option too. So it's sacredsendoffs.com. And of course, you can get the book at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or your local bookstore. Bookshop.org is a great way to do it because that's independent bookstores as well.
I want to talk to you about what that means, to become an animal chaplain, because I really love that you're offering that now. And I love that you're making that available for people because, there are people, Sarah, that are so heartfelt by what you and I are talking about, but they don't have that next step. Right. They don't know how they can be useful in this world. In the conversation we're having, there are people that are thinking, how can I be like her? How can I help people? And what you've done is you've created a way for them to do that. Thank you for doing that. Benny, Lydia, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Sarah's going to walk us through Sacred Sendoffs. One of the things she just held up was a ritual kit, correct? They could get that from you, Sarah?
Yep,
Okay.
from sacredsendoffs.com. Yep, okay. We have dog, we have cat, we have wildlife, all sorts of different ones.
Had I had that with me, it may have helped me because I could not get this image out of my mind.
Yeah.
With Travis. Yeah. It took me a whole decade.
Because we don't process it. Yeah, we don't work with the grief and we just kind of pick up and try to move on.
Well, nobody says it's okay to even do it, right?
That's right.
They're like, just put your dog down.
Well, I'll tell you it's okay.
Okay, thank you. When we come back, Sarah's going to tell all y'all it's okay because there's so much she talks about. There's so much here. But the question really is, what is your reflection, as she says in the book? What is your reflection? What is an animal loss like? What is your reflection? What are you thinking about? What are you carrying? What has somebody told you you should just get over it? Stay tuned. We'll be right back. I'm going to hold up the book again. And I know, Lydia, you're just showing everybody the book right here. Sacred Sendoffs, an animal chaplain's advice for surviving animal loss, making life meaningful, and healing the planet. And really everything is in here. Because even in the book by Sarah Bowen, even in the book, there's a conversation about interspecies living. And what I love about this is, Sarah goes on and gives us a little bit of information, right? And it says something like, worldwide, there are like over 470 million dogs, 370 million cats that live as pets. But then she goes on and say, kind of paraphrasing, did you know, by the way, other people have other things? Goldfish. Benny and I actually shared a goldfish. Goldfish, rabbits, hamsters, horses, ferrets, parrots, turtles, you name it. And then she goes on to say, studies suggest that over 67% of households in the United States, 57% of homes worldwide include a species other than human. That is a lot.
Yeah. And we're up to 70% after the pandemic.
It is a lot. I'm not joking. Benny and I did share a goldfish.
Yeah.
The goldfish story we have shared on the air before and we have laughed. It started out as a little baby thing that came from my two friends. They just got married and they gave everybody little goldfish. I didn't know anything about goldfish. So it kept growing and I kept getting bigger tanks. So it went from this little goldfish to this tank. Then we got this tank. Then we got this tank. But it got so big that when I moved, I had to give it to Benny because the tank was like this. It was
I'm glad you were getting it bigger tanks. It's so important. Whenever I see a goldfish in a tiny bowl, I'm like, please, please, please get them more space because they're remarkably smart. Yeah, they're very, very smart. They do remember faces. Goldfish do.
Do they?
Yeah. So we have this. One of the other things I love to do is bring up language kind of things. Look at language and poke at it a little bit. We often talk about like so-and-so has the memory of a goldfish. And goldfish actually have pretty good memories. So we have these, or he's a snake, right? Or you're a pig, or, we do these things where we bring in animals and we like lob all these things about humans onto them and be like, oh, that's about that animal. But goldfish are actually remarkably smart.
And I'm so glad you said that, because Benny and I really treated this amazing goldfish with respect, except for the hiccup I did. Okay, so some pet store owner told me that I needed to get these little lobsters to clean up the fish tank, eat better. So you go get these little lobsters and you think you're going to put them in there. So you put them in there and they kind of roam. They're little teeny. They're not, he called them lobsters. They're small, but they go around. They kind of eat everything in the bottom. But you got this goldfish and then you put stuff in it and these little lobsters started to crawl up on these things. And I'm telling you, you had to watch. It's really kind of funny. And I come home one day and the goldfish is like going around in the tank and it's got these two lobsters attached to it.
Oh, no.
Because what do I know? I built this little thing and they crawled up. And so you're watching this goldfish, like these two
Well,
lobsters.
you bring up such a great point, which is we often end up living with species that we know, or individuals of species that we know very, very little about. And so one of the things that I often tell people is, if you're thinking about, we pick animals for kind of odd reasons sometimes, right? And we also pick them not so much for fish, but for fuzzy animals, what we think they can do for us, or what we think they can give us, right? Or I need something of benefit out of this. And so really learning about an animal, if you're going to live with an animal, really learn about it, learn what it needs, also learn kind of some of the challenges that face that animal. And really important right now, how that animal got to the place where you want to procure it from. Because puppy mills and exotic pet trade and all of these things, once you start digging a little, is really, really eye-opening. And it can help you understand a little bit more about some of the kind of ethical quandaries. And like there are so many animals. I would love to live with a monkey. I love, love, love monkeys. However, the research on, what happens to monkeys who live with humans is super heartbreaking. It's just not good for them.
Yeah.
Right. So learning about the animals is really helpful. And not just the pet store owner, because they might not know either.
No. Yeah. I love that you brought it up. I want to go to the phones, but I love that you brought it up, because remember I alluded to Travis and how sick he was?
Yeah.
At a 3-month-old, not even, he couldn't walk on his little legs. And he was a collie, beautiful full collie like Lassie. And he couldn't walk. And he developed these fluid. Now, I love the universe. I had just moved into Rainbow Lakes in Jersey. There was a vet literally 500 feet away from me around the corner, just starting out. And I brought him to the vet and did the analysis, and the vet says, take him back. I'm like, okay, now you cannot take a dog back. But what I found out about him, he was so inbred. Now, long story short, I didn't take him back. I took him to the vet as many times as I needed to. We built strength in him. He had hip dysplasia, diagnosed at 6 months. He was supposed to live 5 years. He lived 13. See, that's what Love and Care does, I think. Yeah. Let's go to the phones, Betty. We have got a caller who wants to talk to Sarah. Let's do it.
Charlene from Canada. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Charlene. Happy day. How can we help you?
I was just going to say that I find that when humans need comfort, that animals give unconditional comfort to them, and there's there's a telepathy between pet owners and their animals. There's a silence that just knowing between them. It's
a great observation, Charlene. Yeah. Have you experienced that with an animal?
Actually, I've had other animals in my past, but the ones the budgies I have so much fun with because they love music, and they'll dance for me. They'll, good morning or sexy bird, and you can teach them language. And there's just something about it, like leaving the cage door open, that just for them to just fly free. And I just love birds. Anything with wings. And I do love dogs, but I can't have them where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, there is something beautiful about that wordless space, because some of the birds are, using some of our words, right? But that idea of connecting with an animal in a wordless kind of space, like you're talking about, in that connection and kind of having an inner knowing. Yeah, it's very powerful.
Like you could just look at them, like if it's a dog, and because I've had dogs in my past too, and you'll give them that look, and then they'll just know, just like a child. Like, no, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. I have that going on with a cat in my home right now, who he, just that one look, like, come on, bub. And then he'll give me the look back, like, yeah, I just tried to get away with it. I'm putting a little language on him there, of course.
No
but
kidding,
that's
right?
what I'm picking up, right?
Right. And Charlene, do you have a question for Sarah? And make sure you stay on so we can send you a copy of the book. Do you have a question for Sarah?
Well, I know I just recently lost one of my birds, Bella, and she was with me for quite a few years. I had Spirit before that, and she was with me like 20 years. But my budgies, they age usually they're 5 years and they pass away. But mine stay with me quite a long time. And she had a tumor. I did try to nurse her back to health, but she passed away. So I don't know. I've just been taking a little bit of time in between before I decide whether or not I'm going to get another bird.
I think that's really wise, Charlene.
Kind of like if you wake up in the morning and you can hear the birds singing, and I miss that. Yeah, one of the things I also mention to people who are bird people is you can also, during this transition time while you're waiting, spend more time outside listening to other birds too, because that may help you. Yeah, has that helped bring some kind of other types of connections for you? A bit, but I didn't put my bird feeder out this year because of some kind of bird flu or whatever. I just didn't want any sick birds around, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you've got loss in two ways.
Pardon me?
So you kind of have loss in two ways. You've lost someone inside the home, and you've lost those connections outside the home too. Yeah.
So I'm thinking really of getting another one here soon, but I just haven't decided yet. I was thinking about a parrot.
I don't have much experience with parrots. I do know that they have a whole set of other needs, and require a lot more space too. But I would say try to find someone else, if you know someone near you or can find someone near you who lives with a parrot, and ask them about it. That's a great way when we're changing it. Yeah. You have to pass them on if something happens to you. I mean, there's more commitment.
A lot of work.
Yeah, there's more commitment with a parrot, and there's other considerations about, how parrots get to us too, to take into account. So just do your research and try to see if you can talk to some other folks about what it's like to live with a parrot and what you might need to know. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You bet. It's nice to speak with you, Charlene.
Yeah, thank you. Hang on, and Benny will get some information. Wow, what a great question. And I have a friend that, my gosh, she has 2 parrots. And what did you say? Commitment. It is all of that. But there is this real emotional connection between, her name is Sarah, between Sarah and her parrots. I mean, it is such a strong connection. I mean, I can't even begin to describe it. But, she's in relationship with another person, and this person is feeling like, man, she's like way more connected to the parents, right, than parents than me. But that really, I mean, one of the things that, you touched upon is really learn about things in the book, though. And I want to spend the last time we have left to talk about this. I was really struck by taking a look at myself, especially when you present the moral circle, and looking at the moral circle, and looking and digging into our beliefs. And I think you say digging into your beliefs doesn't mean blaming ourselves for the choices we've made. And that brings a question that we didn't talk about today. And I alluded to it. In most cultures and in the United States, euthanasia is not acceptable for humans. Can't even think about it here. I mean, other cultures, yeah. But when it comes to our animal friends, it's almost a way of life. It's almost a thing. And you even talk about human disability and disability for our companions, animal companions, etc. Now, I'm not kidding when I shared the story about Travis. I couldn't see how much pain he was in because I tried to find solutions to help him get outside. And I mean, honestly, my friends are like, really? You've got a wagon carrying your 13-year-old dog. But the idea of, how should we say it, putting him down or putting him to sleep, every animal owner that I've ever known faces that.
Yeah, this is the area that a lot of my work is in, Pat, is working with people around those messy ethical questions of and decisions about animals who are injured, or they're critically ill, or they're aging, or what's going on. And so it does take a lot of discernment and responsibility to try to think about, what is life for them like, and how am I feeling? We have those connections with the animals. The people who see us, with a dog in a cart don't.
Right.
But we do. And what's
Yeah.
very, very interesting, let's go back to that idea of speciesism for a second.
Yes,
Okay?
let's.
So, so think about if you had a child who could no longer use their legs, or you had a mother who could no longer use her legs. We might apply a different set of characteristics of what is acceptable to do for that person, right? We wouldn't think twice about getting a wheelchair or some sort of mobility assisted advice. But with animals, what we've done is we've kind of projected this idea of, and it comes from agriculture. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we adopted it because the keeping of pets happened because people had enough affluence to be able to have an animal around without needing to, quote unquote, use it in some other way that we don't have to use animals in now. But, it came from agriculture of, if you had a horse or you had a cow or you had somebody who was lame, there was an economic issue there. So you put it down.
Yep.
Right? Now we know way more about animals. We know that they are sentient. We know that they feel pain. We know that they make decisions. We know that they use tools. They are smart. All these things that we used to say only humans had. So why wouldn't we extend, knowing all those things, all those ways they're like us, why wouldn't we also extend a cart for a dog? Or a prosthetic device. There's a guy named Derek who has this show, Wizard of Paws, who makes these amazing prosthetic devices for elephants and horses and dogs. So what I want to try to do in the book, and just to wrap that up, because I can go on this topic for a long time because I'm passionate about it, but we need to rethink what we're extending to animals. Now, it doesn't mean that we keep people or animal persons alive at so long when they're in pain, right? There's a line there we have to find. Working with an animal chaplain, working with a therapist, working with a social worker, working with a really good friend who also likes dogs. Those are the people we need to help do decision making. And we also need to the folks who are going, okay, Pat, come on. You got the dog in the wagon. We also need to realize they're coming from a different place.
Yeah.
And we don't need to take that on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you brought it up, and I love that you brought it, brought it full circle for us, because this is the body of work that you do. And this is the area that I mentioned at the top of the show. If I'd have known you, what I experienced with this dog that I loved, both of us loved him, we would have had another way. We would have had a better understanding. We'd have understood ourselves better, Sarah.
Yeah.
You
And
know
the
what I'm
research
saying?
tells us that. It tells us that the way to heal for grief is not to get rid of grief, but to learn to live with the fact that there was a loss,
Yep.
how we process that loss and we adjust to life after that loss, and how we keep enduring connections with those animals after loss. And the research tells us that when we talk to other people about it,
Yeah.
we heal better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if that's the one thing that I can impart to anyone listening today, is you got to talk about it with people. Find the right people. Find the people who don't say, it's just a dog. Find Google animal chaplain near me, right? Or find a social worker or a veterinary social worker, or go to a pet loss support group. There's tons of those. Read my book, pick up a loss kit, do something with other people. I love to advocate for the furry wake, how to have a furry wake. There's directions for that on my website.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Here's to your point. I had a conversation with somebody I know, an acquaintance, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago, could have been longer, who called me and said, Pat, I understand you a little better. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I just lost my husband. And I said, yes, I did. I knew that. She said, but now I know what you mean. That after losing Travis, how you said you'd never get another dog. Now, we laughed about this analogy because I'm telling you, you could hear a pin drop on this call. She says, I don't think I'm going to get another husband. And I'm thinking, how does my dog, and then it hit me. So part of my story, what she was saying is, why would she feel like she cannot get another dog, right? That's just stupid. But somehow in her mind, she made a call out of the blue to me to tell me in her own way that she understood, like what, 20 years later, what I was grieving. A funny call, but it was an emotional call.
Because loss is loss.
Thank you.
Loss is loss. And loss doesn't know a species barrier.
Thank you.
Loss is loss. That's why divorce hurts. That's why moving can hurt.
Yep.
That's why, a family that's having trauma. That's why an entire country can be hurt. Right? We loss is loss. So how wonderful that your friend was able to call and, and say, hey, I have touched that place of heartbreak that I saw you touch.
Yeah. And the work that you do, and I just want to take a minute. I want people to know what you're setting up, also how to get the book. But I also love the idea that you've opened up an opportunity for people to become chaplains. Can you please mention that again?
Sure. So sacredsendoffs.com is the website, excuse me, with all of the information about everything we're talking about today. But the chaplaincy program is a mix of, I like to say, a mix of science and spirituality that helps people understand more about animals' lives and how to help people heal broken hearts. So it's a program where it's available from anywhere. We have students in the U.S. and Canada and Scotland and Kenya that are coming in this September cohort. It's a cohort model, lots of conversations together, lots of interesting readings, and then help for you to understand and to practice working with others on how do you support other people in presence? Because that's the problem. We always think, I don't know what to say. And the answer is, it's not about what we say, it's about how we are.
Yeah.
So we just need to learn to be with people. So if anyone's interested, check out sacredsendoffs.com. I would love, there's a little button for have a consultation with me. And I'd love to talk to you more about the program.
I just thought of Charlene, when you were talking about that, I know Charlene, but, look, everything that you've included in the book, it touches so many different things, Sarah, and I want to thank you for that. What we didn't talk about, of course, is in the book, the villains, who are they, what we believe, What does PETA as an organization do? How about farm animals? Why do we get so emotional? I have a friend that's so emotional about this. She's an advocate. But see, all of it ties together, and you brought it together so beautifully in your book. Thank you for that. One last question. What's your personal message? What would you like to leave us with?
I would like to leave people with the idea that it's important for us to radiate the compassion that we do to humans beyond humans, however that is for you, whether that's to cats and animals in a shelter, or it's working as an animal advocate for farmed animals, or it's just sitting outside, leaving grass wild for birds and squirrels, right? Whatever it is that you do what you do.
Sarah Bowen, everybody, Sacred Sendoffs, as we said before, and I know Lydia's been showing you all, right? There are so many things in the book. We've talked about some of them. We haven't talked about them all, including things like witnessing wild losses. There's just so much in here. I don't think you've left anything out that I could think of, Sarah.
Yeah, if you guys want to know how I deal with roadkill, there's a lot of that in the book too.
I got to tell you, one of the greatest cries I've ever had is over an animal I hit on the road.
It happens so much. We lose 1 million animals every day, folks, wildlife on the roads.
And then my friends were like, what? You're pulling over the car? You want to pull it off? You want to bury it? That's a whole nother show we could talk about.
It's a whole nother chapter, folks.
And yes, I did. I did pull it off the road. I did bury it.
Good for you.
I had a little ritual. We were an hour late for where we were going. Too bad. Thank you, Sarah, for everything.
To be continued, Pat. Thank you for the time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Hey, Benny and Lydia, thank you all. And thank you to the best audience on the planet. Lots in this book. Please, if you're grieving, get a hold of Sarah. All right. Thank you. We'll see you next time.